Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Nandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Nandana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Kantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Radhakirti Gopinath ki jai. Gaurnitai ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Lord,
all-pervading personality of life, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, and unto Narayana Rishi, supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasdev, the author. Nashchakaramishu Madheshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttamastoke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. I regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam and the rendering of service to the pure devotees. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana-Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him.
Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. We're reading from the 9th canto, continuing on hearing about Lord Ramachandra. Yesterday we heard about the material perverted reflection of the pure love of Ram and Sita Radha and Krishna, and how we should be fearful of misusing this performed uninterrupted Agnihotra Yajna, performed uninterrupted Agnihotra Yajna for 13,000 years. After completing the sacrifice, Lord Ramachandra, whose lotus feet were sometimes pierced by thorns when he lived in Dandakaranya, placed those lotus feet in the hearts of those who always think of him. Then he entered his own abode, the Vaikuntha planet beyond the Brahmajyoti. Lord Arjuna's reputation for having killed Ravana with showers of arrows at the request of the demigods, and for having built a bridge over the ocean, does not constitute the factual glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra, whose spiritual body is always engaged in various pastimes. Lord Ramachandra has no equal or superior, and therefore he had no need to take help from monkeys to gain victory over Ravana. Lord Ramachandra's spotless fame, which vanquished all sinful reactions, are celebrated in all directions like the ornamental cloth of the victorious elephant that conquers all directions. Great saintly persons like Markandeya Rishi still glorify his characteristics in the assemblies of great emperors like Maharaj Yudhishthira. Similarly, all the saintly kings and all the demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, worship the Lord by bowing down their helmets. Let me offer my obeisances unto his lotus feet. Lord Ramachandra returned to his abode, to which bhakti yogis are promoted. This is the place to which all the inhabitants of Ayodhya went after they served the Lord in his manifest pastimes, by offering him obeisances, touching his lotus feet, fully observing him as a father-like king, sitting or lying down with him like equals, or even just accompanying him. O King Parikshit, anyone who orally receives concerning the characteristics of Lord Ramachandra's pastimes will ultimately be freed from the disease of envy and thus be liberated from the bondage of fruitive activities. So the verse we'll focus on today is that final one, and it's the Falashruti. It's the benefit of hearing the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra, or Krishna Katha in general, is that we get free from envy and liberated from bondage to karma. So this verse, Purusha Ramacharitam. So any person, Purusha, who hears the charita, the character of, so like the qualities, the pastimes of the character of Lord Ram, what Shravanayar, oral reception, Upadarayan, simply by this process of hearing, then Anrashamsya para, one becomes completely free from envy, and Karma Bandhai Vimuchyate, one becomes liberated from fruitive activity. It's a very simple verse again, so we can have the meaning of it in our minds as we chant. Because Sanskrit is transcendental, it's nice if we just hear the sound vibration, but also if we know what we're saying, it's more pleasing to our hearts, it's more pleasing to Krishna's heart. He explains in the Gita that it's better to do activities in service in full knowledge. It's a higher platform. So it's good at the beginning to kind of go along with the ritual. Rituals aren't bad, but if we stay always in a dry ritual place, then we won't get the most benefit and we won't feel the most satisfaction from the practice. So it's important that we know the meaning of what we're saying. Purusho Ramacharitam Shravaner Upadharayan Anrashamsya Parorajan Dharma Bandher Vimuchyate Purusho Ramacharitam Shravanay Upadharaya
Sya Paro Rajan.
Adrishamsya paro rajan karma bandhe vimuchyate
Purushorama Charitam.
Shravanay upadharayan
Anushamsya paro rajan
karma bandhe vimuchyate Purusho Ramacharitam Shravanay upadharayan Adrishamsya paro rajan
karma bandhe vimuchyate
karma bandhe vimuchyate Purusho Ramacharitam Shravanay upadharayan Anrishamsya paro rajan karma bandhe vimuchyate. Thank you all. So we did the word for word, more or less. We can go on to the translation. O King Parikshit, you can read with me. O King Parikshit, anyone who orally receives the narrations concerning the characteristics of Lord Ramachandra's pastimes will ultimately be freed from the disease of envy and thus be liberated from the bondage of fruitive activities. Some of you have been saying, anyone who actually, that's not the right word, but it is actually true. I like that. It's a good addition. So we need to orally receive, but even though we're just having it go into our ears, we need to actually receive it. How do we actually receive it? How do we actually receive it? The verse says. Well, yes, through the ear, but that's not sufficient, just the ear. We need to be free from this disease of envy, to actually hear. Yeah. And then we can fully relish the pastimes. At the beginning, the hearing process might be a little difficult. We might be bored sometimes. We might feel this isn't related to me. I'd rather hear my own pastimes. Isn't it? So when we're freed from the disease of envy, then we can actually hear. Okay, purport. Any volunteers to read? Yes, Tina.
Here in this material world, everyone is envious of someone else. Even in religious life, it is sometimes found that if one devotee has advanced in spiritual activities, other devotees are envious of him. Such envious devotees are not completely freed from the bondage of birth and death. As long as one is not completely free from the cause of birth and death, one cannot enter the Sanatana Dham, or the eternal pastimes of the Lord. One becomes envious because of being influenced by the designations of the body. But the liberated devotee has nothing to do with the body, and therefore he is completely free on the transcendental platform. A devotee is never envious of anyone, even his enemy. Because the devotee knows that the Lord is his supreme protector, he thinks, what harm can the so-called enemy do? Thus, a devotee is confident about his protection. The Lord says, Ye yata mam prapadyanti tam stataiva bhajamiham. According to the proportion of one's surrender unto me, I respond accordingly. A devotee must therefore be completely free from envy, especially of other devotees. To envy other devotees is a great offense and a Vaishnava aparadha. A devotee who constantly engages in hearing and chanting, Shravana Kirtana, is completely freed from the disease of envy, and thus he becomes eligible to go back home, back to God.
Thank you, Dino. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is a powerful purport, huh? It's heavy. So I think that we can go through and just look at each line. Every line here is highly instructive and revealing. Srila Prabhupada's purports are like light, pure light, and it reveals the darkness in our own hearts, you know? Like, if your room is really messy and disorganized, if you have the lights off, you might not notice. Whereas, you're going to buy a new house and the realtor, has all the lights off. They might be tricking you that it's not actually clean or there's some holes in the walls. But if you turn on full bright lights, then you can see the issues. So Srila Prabhupada is illuminating our own hearts. He starts saying that here in this material world, everyone is envious of someone else. Also, I just have to point out Srila Prabhupada's brilliance in writing. So when you're beginning an essay, this is at least how I learned in high school, maybe you learned similarly, you have a funnel. And so the first sentence, the first paragraph of your message should be very universal. So practically anyone could, or at least the audience you're intending, all of them would see your first sentence, your first paragraph, and feel, yes, this is relevant to me. The same goes with speaking, making social media content, giving a class, with distributing books on the street. You want to say something immediately that will hook people, that feels relevant and touches universal needs. And then there's the saying, in like a needle, out like a plow, right? A plow, you all know what a plow is? Like for tilling the soil, right? So it's a very powerful tool. A needle, however, is very small. So you start with something that will actually enter someone's mind and heart, and they'll open up. Vaisheshika Prabhu describes the power of a wedge also. The best wedge has a very small tip. And so you have some leverage in someone's heart. And some people are more or less easy to influence. So some people who are very difficult to influence, a very expert communicator can use the right language, the right mood to open someone's heart and find a way. Even the most antagonistic, atheistic person on the street, an expert book distributor, may be able to distribute a book to them, or at least leave them with a nice impression by speaking the right words. So Srila Prabhupada brilliantly opens up. Everyone in this material world is envious. So anyone who's a little sincere, which is his audience, is those who are fortunate enough to open their mind to a transcendental message. We can all relate to this point. Yeah, I've gone through it. And then Srila Prabhupada proceeds to plow our hearts, and we'll get into some of these points about how you can't go back to Godhead if you're not free from this. And how the worst thing is to offend other devotees. But then Srila Prabhupada ends with such a positive, hopeful note. He says that, don't worry, if you chant and hear pastimes and names of Krishna, then you can be freed from this and go back home, back to Godhead. It would be interesting to analyze Srila Prabhupada's lectures and purports and see how many times he ends in this way. It's quite common for those who have studied Prabhupada's Vani. And say, and then you can go back home, back to Godhead. Thank you very much. And then everyone, Jai Prabhupada. You'll hear his lectures sometimes? Yes. Very sweet to hear. So, let's get into Srila Prabhupada's brilliant one-paragraph purport. Everyone is envious of someone else in this material world, even in religious life. So why does Prabhupada say that? Why do you think he said? He already said everyone is envious. So why does he say it even in religious circles? Yeah, Bruce?
Because he's communicating with his disciples and people that are trying to practice bhakti.
Yes, why is he trying to specifically convey a message to that group? Because aren't they included in everyone is envious?
Yeah.
So, yeah?
That the devotee should not think that, oh, I'm a devotee, so I'm free from
Yes. Confirmed. So, a religious person may think that they're beyond this. And this is actually a danger when we become identified as, I'm a devotee, I'm a Hare Krishna, I'm a Christian, whatever. It's a designation. Actually our identity is Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Nudasa. That's our real identification, is I'm just the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Not I'm a saintly devotee. So if we think in this way, we can become proud. And then we can read words from a pure devotee. Or we can, amazing souls visit here. Next month you'll have so many. We will get to have the association of many great souls, hear amazing classes. And we can be sitting hearing a class from an exalted soul and think like, yeah, those karmis, yeah, they're really bad, huh? Like all those neophyte devotees, yeah, hard to be them. And what are we thinking? We don't say it directly, but we're thinking, I'm beyond that, right? It's dangerous. Therefore, Prabhupada says, even devotees, it's sometimes found that one devotee has advanced and other devotees become envious of such a person. So we might not want to admit it, but we feel this. Yeah? Someone's further along and we're feeling a little hurt by that. We're feeling, why are they getting so much attention? Why can't I get the praise? So this is even found among the Vaishnava community. And such envious devotees are not completely freed from the bondage of birth and death. As long as one is not completely free from the cause of birth and death, one cannot enter the Sanatan Dham, or the eternal pastimes of the Lord. So we should recognize, we should put the light on our own consciousness after reading purports like this, and try to see throughout the day, to what degree am I influenced by envy? And envy can manifest in a spirit of competition. Maybe we experience this sometimes. Oh, they're distributing books better than me. They're playing the instruments better than me. Oh, she sings better than me. Or, oh, he repeats the Sanskrit better. Right? We sometimes think in this way. It's going to bind us, it's going to keep us stuck and take another birth as a devotee so we can be the best Mridanga player in our next birth. Do we want to be a good Mridanga player, or do we want to go home back to Godhead? Both. I'll go back to Godhead by being the best Mridanga player. Yeah. So we have to be careful about this competitive spirit. And what's the opposite of this feeling I'm low and I feel bad when this person is better than me? The opposite is what?
You feel happy.
You feel happy. Yeah. The happiness of others is my own happiness. And if we see the reality, Prabhupada gives this beautiful analogy that we are all part of the same body. And when one part of the body is injured, then the rest of the body sends help. The heart will send blood to help heal that part of the body. Because the whole body is interconnected. If one part is not functioning properly, it will the other parts of the body will suffer as a result. So it's like that in our families and our communities, that we're all interconnected. We may not see it so clearly, but as we develop more purity of vision, as we develop more of the mode of goodness, we can see that actually the consciousness of everyone around affects me. My own consciousness affects everyone around. That's why when an exalted devotee comes to visit, we feel so uplifted. Like, I've stayed here. I always end up coming to Toronto and I stay longer because there's such amazing devotees who come. Vaisheshika Prabhu will be here soon, Keshava Swami will be here soon. And you just feel this surcharge of enthusiasm. It's because of their consciousness. So we're all interconnected. And a mature devotee becomes not antagonistic, but they become a well-wisher of others. This is the opposite of being envious, is to actually want others to be happy. And not only to be happy, but to be more happy, to be more exalted than one's own self. This is an extraordinary mentality. That I'm not concerned with being someone special. I want to just help bring everyone closer to Krishna. Everyone who I contact, I want to bring them a little bit closer to Krishna. And that type of devotee becomes very dear to Krishna. In the 12th chapter of the Gita, Krishna gives a whole list of beautiful qualities that endear one to Krishna. And he speaks about one who doesn't put others into distress and who is not distressed by anyone else. That person is very, very dear to me, Krishna says. And so rather than creating distress, maybe we come into a room and we're just super passionate and we can be, I'm speaking about myself, like maybe loud or a little intense. Maybe I can disturb some people. But rather if we can come into a space and have a very easygoing mood and very sensitive to the needs of individuals in the room and wanting to uplift, this is a devotee who is a well-wisher. And if we don't get free from this disease of envy and become a well-wishing, mature devotee, we can't go and enter the eternal pastimes of Krishna. But why is that? Why can't you go participate in the pastimes of Krishna if you have envy in your heart? Because
if we are envious of others, it can turn into Krishna as well. We can be envious of Krishna as well. That's
our root problem. That's why we left Krishna. Yeah. So we're thinking, I want to be in the center. Like when you have a pond, if everyone, all of us in this room, imagine we're standing around a pond and we all throw stones somewhere that we feel whimsically we want to throw it. Then the circles, the ripples will all be discordant. But if we all decide, let's throw it right in the center, then it's perfect concentric circles. Yeah. So when Krishna is in the center, then it's all harmonious. Yes. And also, along with our envy being directed towards Krishna, everyone in the spiritual world is free from envy. And we just won't fit in. We won't fit in because everyone there is not envious. You have to have the qualification of being pleasing to Krishna, because Krishna's pure devotees aren't going to want someone who will displease Krishna to be there in the spiritual world. Their whole life is to be connected to Krishna. Krishna's pure devotees are so connected to his pain and pleasure that when Krishna is walking barefoot, like we saw in a few verses back, that we were hearing about the lotus feet of Lord Ram. Yeah. And where was that? Anyway, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about how Krishna's feet may be pierced by thorns in the Vrindavan forest. And so Krishna's devotees are very concerned because any tiny amount of pain for Krishna is a great pain for them. The lotus feet? Yeah, yes. So in this purport. So that's the quality of Krishna's devotees in the spiritual world. And if someone goes there who will cause even a tiny bit of pain to Krishna, well, they'll keep that person at a distance. So therefore, we can't go back into the eternal pastimes of Krishna unless we're free from this envy. Yeah.
When you mentioned that if we go back to, if we have envy and we go back to Golok, which we cannot go,
yeah.
I was thinking, if association can change the way we are, then why can't we just go there and associate with them and our envy will be gone and we can stay there? But then I realized that if we are envious, that means we're causing pain to Krishna. So devotees won't like it, so they'll keep it as distance. They'll keep us at distance. So then we can't have association with them. So.
And also, yes, it's true what you said, that we can be purified by association. We can also be degraded by good association. How is that? How can you be degraded by good association?
Because we'll be envious of them.
Yes.
Do offenses.
If we make offenses. So it's actually very dangerous. We should consider our position extremely fortunate and extremely tenuous. We all have the fortune of very sincere devotees association. We're talking about exalted devotees, but the devotees in this room are exalted, extremely rare. And so if we're making offenses to the devotees in Bhakti Academy, in the congregation here, then Krishna will be displeased, and for our benefit, he'll keep us at a distance, so we don't degrade ourselves by making more offenses. And Kalakanta Prabhu described, this struck me ever since he said it years ago, that it's not that we'll start to see Krishna consciousness as less exciting, less interesting necessarily, but Krishna will make Maya look very interesting and appealing if we start to make offenses. Isn't that kind of scary? So we'll just think like, oh yeah, I should go and pursue this materialistic thing. And even we can convince ourselves, no, I'll still be a good devotee and I'll do that. You know? Yeah, no, I'll keep my practice and I'll keep good association, but I have to get this thing. So we have to be very careful about making offenses. Okay, so I'm going to keep going in the purport since it's so wonderful. Srila Prabhupada says, one becomes envious because of being influenced by the designations of the body. So, interesting. The more that we're identified with the body, it seems that Prabhupada is saying that is the degree to which this envy can manifest. So we need to be very careful about getting free from bodily identification. And he says that a liberated devotee has nothing to do with the body. They're on the spiritual platform. And a devotee is never envious of anyone, even his enemy. Because the devotee knows that the Lord is his supreme protector, he thinks, what harm can the so-called enemy do? Thus, a devotee is confident about his protection. This is striking. The standard that we need to come to is not just to be a well-wisher, but to be non-envious and want to uplift and benefit even people who are very antagonistic to us, even someone who's trying to harm us physically, emotionally. Kalakanta Prabhu also makes this point that when you join the Hare Krishna movement, you may think that, yeah, I want to get free from my distress. I want to have good fortune in my life, good association, healthy, balanced life, connected to God, a pious life. But actually it's the path of sainthood. If you really stick around in devotional service, we see that the goal is to become a saint. The inevitable reality is that that will happen. It's just, there's the slow or the long way, as we mentioned yesterday. So a devotee who becomes this non-envious, they become, one way we become non-envious is understanding the Lord's protection. Understanding Krishna has got my back, and even if someone is criticizing me, I'm okay. Krishna is doing this for my benefit. Like Prahlad Maharaj is such a wonderful example. He was being tortured, and yet he had full confidence in Krishna's protection. So of course this doesn't mean that we just let anyone harm us. Humility and non-enviousness doesn't mean that we don't protect ourselves. Especially in a leadership role, there's a necessity to stand up for those who are being in any way mistreated. So continuing, the Lord says, Ye yatam mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajami aham. According to the proportion of one's surrender unto me, I respond accordingly. A devotee must therefore be completely free from envy, especially of other devotees. To envy other devotees is a great offense of Vaishnava aparad. Lord Chaitanya calls this the Hati Mata, and we just found in the CC yesterday, Hati Mata, right? Hati is elephant, and Mata is, actually here in that translation it said, or in the word for word, it was intoxicated. So Lord Chaitanya compares offenses to devotees to an intoxicated elephant. Isn't that interesting? Like, yeah, if an elephant came into this room, it would destroy everything. This IKEA furniture would last, 5 seconds. Even if one of us jumped up and down on one of these tables, it would crack. So what to speak of our little bhakti creeper in our heart? If we make offenses to devotees, it will ruin us. And the hopeful conclusion Srila Prabhupada gives is that we simply hear and chant, and we will become free from this disease of envy and become eligible to go back to Godhead. So it's a simple process. It's just going to be a little painful as Krishna does the surgery to remove this tumor in our heart. So we need to support each other. We need to be well-wishers of each other. At least if we have envy in our hearts, if we're still not yet perfected Vaishnavas. So we need to have well-wishing devotees who we can reveal our minds to and work through these things. Because if we simply repress and we don't open up our hearts to those who can help us, then it will explode later on. So let us go on hearing and chanting in the association of mature devotees and help each other on the sometimes challenging path back to Godhead. Last thing I'll say is a brilliant analogy I got from one of my mentors, Parameshwar Prabhu. He described that spiritual life, bhakti at the beginning, is like you're biking up a steep hill. Has anyone biked up a steep hill? Very difficult, grueling. Your thighs will be burning, and sometimes you have to stand up on your bike so you can really push the pedals. At the beginning it's like that, as we go through anartha nivriti, purifying all of the anarthas in our hearts, the unwanted things. It's a struggle, and we need a lot of support. But at a certain point we'll come to the top, and then we get to a downhill. And you know how sweet it is when you can just coast. Like we were talking about Kop and Aline yesterday. This is the spiritual version of Kop and Aline. We don't want to get comfortable in the material world and just think, if I'm materially well off, I'm good. No, we push hard, we get whatever support we need to get to that point where we're at Nishta and Ruchi, the stable platform of bhakti, and even where we get a taste for the practices of bhakti, where every day is a joy in devotional service. When we get to that platform, then it's still, we still got to work, and it's not entirely easy, but it's a coast, more or less, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Thank you for allowing me to share some words. And no, applause is not required. Thank you. Please, the more pleasing thing will be to hear your reflections, something from your hearts. Yeah, let's go. Sahadev and Amala.
One thing that a friend told me recently to help combat the tendency to make offenses, because actually we heard this from Krishna, what's his name? Amiya's guru. Haladar Swami. We heard from Haladar Swami earlier in May that pleasure for a conditioned soul is to make offenses.
Wow.
Like the pleasure for a conditioned soul is to break regulative principles and make offenses. That's how conditioned souls get their pleasure, basically. So the tendency is there in conditioned souls, but a good way to combat that especially against devotees, even though it's not pleasing to be offensive to anyone, or Krishna isn't pleased when we're offensive to anyone, whether they're a devotee or not, but especially devotees, is just to glorify devotees, like really intensely in your mind, and out loud too, but especially in the mind. Even if it seems forced or unrealistic, just like glorify the heck out of devotees. And you do that in your mind and get into a habit of it, and eventually it'll kind of help to change the propensity.
Very nice. Yeah, thank you. And sometimes devotees get uncomfortable and we compliment them a lot directly to their face. And so then we can do it behind their back. We shouldn't talk about devotees behind their back unless it's good things. Then it's very nice. Yeah. Thank you, Sahadev. Yes, Amala.
Thank you, Prabhu. I really enjoyed the class today. My question is, this has always been a topic of debate whenever I ask different people. You mentioned people in spiritual world don't have envy, but at the same time, I completely agree that we should not have envy, and it's not a nice thing to have. But at the same time, if I talk about Jatila and Kutila, their service is to be envious of other people who are helping Radha and Krishna to meet. And then also, as soon as Bhaktimarga Swami Maharaj said once that people from left side are envious of the devotees on the right side.
Yeah, there's the gopis with a more liberal mood, with a more conservative mood. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So even in the spiritual world, there are different moods which conflict. And the difference is that it's all for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna appreciates variety. Variety is the mother of pleasure, is an expression. So the difference is that it's pure. And our envy is with our pleasure in the center. So even competition can be used in the service of Krishna. It's there in the spiritual world, and here in our sadhana bhakti practice, we can use competition to do service even better. So rather than seeing another devotee playing Mridanga better than me, and I feel disheartened by it, rather we should appreciate, wow, they're playing so nicely, I'd like to play that well and even become better than them. And then I'd like them to see me playing better, and then they become better than me, you know? And it's all because if we all become expert at the instruments, of course the devotion is the main thing, but if you add the sweet packaging of expertise to the devotional offering, then it'll be so nice for Krishna. And if we can all become musically, or at least some of us can become musically adept and harmonize together and create a wonderful orchestra of kirtan for Krishna, then how nice will that be? So yeah, that would be the positive reflection of envy, of competition. What do you think? Is that helpful?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Jai, and then one.
One point I like was one should not be egoistic of one being Krishna devotee and thinking like, oh, this person is karmiya, all of that.
Yes.
I like that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we shouldn't think that all these instructions we're hearing only apply to materialists. We should be really introspective and see, okay, Prabhupada is saying I'm not the body again and again. I shouldn't think, yeah, I'm beyond that, I'm transcendental. Clearly I'm not. I know the way I behave and how much I try to serve my body. This instruction is for me. The 101 level is still for me because I haven't realized it. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Monil and then Dino.
I want to share something personal. So one time what happened is there was a devotee in temple and everyone was glorifying him for what he was doing, you know, his sadhana and everything. And someone was glorifying him in front of me, and what happened is, in my mind, I was thinking all the wrong things that that devotee was doing. So that happened, that devotee also went away, and then I was sitting by myself and I was like, what was I doing at that time? You know, what was that? And then I realized that, oh, that is envy. That is envy. Because he was glorifying the devotee, and in my mind I was thinking all the wrong things that I may not express it, but in my mind it was running. So I was like, oh, this is very dangerous. And then what I did was, like, I started glorifying the devotee. I was like, okay, if that devotee is doing something better or he's doing something nice, then let me go and ask him, how are you doing it? Let me take some help from him, right? So yeah, I tried doing that and that was helpful.
That's really sincere and helpful for all of us. Thank you for sharing that, because we may feel that I'm the only one who thinks this way, but no, it's something I've seen in my own consciousness as well. And it reminds me of the character of Lord Shiva, which is described in the 4th canto, that he is so, and it's also in general describing great Vaishnavas, that even seeing a tiny, insignificant good quality in another, he'll glorify that, he'll magnify that, and see just that. Whereas the faults they won't see. Like, what's that term? Adoshi darshada. Yeah? Something like that. Not seeing. Adoshi, no faults, darsha, to see no faults. Yeah, it's the name of Lord Chaitanya. And on the other hand, one who is materialistically contaminated, then we may see a tiny fault and magnify that. And even if there's a million good qualities, we ignore those and just focus on the fault. Yeah, thank you. And also I wanted to share, before your point related here, is that we're talking about Shravanam and Kirtanam, hearing and chanting about Lord Ram, about Krishna, about the Supreme Lord, is the way to purify this envy from our heart. But this topic of glorifying devotees is coming up, and that's non-different. Actually hearing and repeating the good qualities of Vaishnavas, this is also kirtan. This is, Prabhupada writes like this, and I think it's 1st canto purport. This is kirtan, to praise the Vaishnavas. It's very pleasing to Krishna, and it will free us from this envious tendency. So yes, let's create a culture here in Bhakti Academy, in the ISKCON Toronto community, of always speaking positively about other devotees. Unless it's our service to look for faults. An ashram leader, a temple president, they have to, it's their duty to look for faults and rectify them. If we don't have that service, we should be very careful about that tendency. Yes, Tina?
A question. So, envy can be really subtle also. Like, I look at a devotee, for example, who's getting constant association of another exalted devotee that I really admire. And I'd be like, oh, must be nice. Is that also envy?
It can be. It depends on our mood. Because we could be thinking, I'm so happy for them. It must be nice for them. Rather than like, it must be nice. Like, wow, it must be nice. It's about the mood.
Yes.
That's what's important.
Also, how do we know we're actually sincerely hearing or reading? Like, I might be really attentive, trying to get the message, trying to learn, but how do I actually know if I'm being really sincere or not?
We know if we're able to repeat it and apply it. This is one test. Of course, simply hearing is good. If we're just hearing and hearing and hearing, we'll be purified, we'll get benefit. But better is if we can apply and distribute. Because when you try to teach, you realize maybe are lacking. Which is why book distribution is such a powerful service, because you have to go and try to convince people, and your faith is challenged. You realize, oh, I don't actually know this as well as I thought. I don't actually have as much faith in Prabhupada and in Krishna and my Guru as I thought. I'm actually, I come out here and I get mental right away, and what faith do I really have? If Krishna is all powerful, why should I become, why should I think it's difficult right now? Or it's difficult, but why should I think I can't be empowered by Guru and Krishna? Yeah, so we should, Shravanam leads to Kirtanam. And then as we advance more and more, it turns into Smaranam, and we constantly are remembering the sweetness of Krishna, the sweetness of the devotees, and then our whole life becomes wonderful if our heart is just filled with the sweetness of Krishna Katha. So we're at our time, we can maybe finish with one more?
Yes. Yeah. More like a question. So, sometimes envy can also be not envy, but I would say offenses. You can make offenses while you are maybe trying to be humorous, or it's like you're not being very sensitive of the other person, and you might not be aware also that someone is getting offended. But how do we know that what is the limit of making fun or joking? How do we know, like, okay, this is the limit? If I go above it, then that person might get offended, or it's maybe not, they're not feeling very good.
Yeah. Yes, sensitivity is a very important word you brought up. We should become sensitive devotees. Some are more naturally sensitive than others. And we can also just approach a devotee if we feel we've made some disturbance and have it hurt your feelings? When I said that, did that hurt you? You can just directly ask like that. But also, as we get to know someone, then we can see just a little facial expression. They'll do something like that. We know we've hurt them. So at the beginning, it might be a little more direct, but as we become more and more sensitive, and also, again, I'll plug book distribution. You learn to be very sensitive. You can read minds. You can understand hearts when you do this service of book distribution. Krishna will empower you to understand what's happening in the heart of another person, and then you can apply that also with devotees. So we need to become mind readers. That's the secret. Yeah. Thank you all so much for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.